following program is a production of the Barroom Network. It is intended for all audiences.
Doug Buffone.
This defense sucks. This is moronic.
John Buffone.
If your best run plays are coming off end arounds, there's a problem.
Doug was behind the microphone first. He never held back.
Very difficult to score when your offense is on the bench. When your defense is out there giving up 70, 80, 70, 64-yard drives.
Now, it's his nephew, John, and there's no holding this Buffone back either.
The biggest thing that affected Justin Fields was a coaching change, and now he has an offensive coordinator, and he actually will fit a scheme to the quarterback, something we have not seen in a long time.
I've had it. I have had it. I want somebody to get kicked in the ass.
When I see Twitter polls and national media and fans weighing in on who is going to have the number one overall pick in the 2023 draft, and I see people commenting Chicago and it's not even close, then yeah, you know what? I'm going to get a little defensive.
I got my ass whipped many times, but I tell you, I took somebody down with me.
I don't think the Bears are a 2 to 3 win team. So to answer your question, no. The Bears aren't going to be the worst team in the NFL.
It's Buffone 55, the John Buffone Show.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Buffone 55, a fast-paced approach at breaking down those lovable Chicago Bears. I'm John Buffone, and with me, as always, is my co-host and producer, Alyssa Barbieri. Alyssa, that Sunday night game was pretty sucky on a number of levels, so I guess we kind of got a reality check. How you doing?
I mean, doing as well as I can after that. I mean, it was nice to kind of feel a little bit of hope and optimism on the show heading into Packers week. But, you know, again, just brought back down to earth very quickly and very violently. So, I mean, hey, the Bears are 1-1 after 2 weeks. You would have told me that, you know, going into the season, I'd be pretty happy.
Yeah, not bad. How late were you up after that game, getting all your content out?
Oh, man, 2 a.m.
2 a.m. Is that on the East Coast or Central Time?
East Coast.
Yeah, I kind of bowed out of the post-game show because I had to be up super early the next day. I put like 30 minutes in. I'm like, hey, guys, we're going to bring somebody else in. I'm out. And if they would have won, maybe it's a different story. But no, that's always the worst part of the primetime games, especially when they lose. It's just they got to stay up and do all this stuff after they lose. And then I get to bed. I get 4 hours of sleep, and I have nothing to show for it because they lost. So you know what? We're going to try to turn the page a little bit because they do have another. That's what they got 17 games. They got to play them all. We're heading into week 3. And we actually have an awesome guest lined up to help us better understand the Lovie Smith-led Houston Texans. But just in case, for whatever reason, this might be your first time listening or watching Buffone 55, Alyssa, please give these people a rundown on how the show works.
Absolutely. So Buffone 55 has 3 segments, and we always begin with our guest. And this week, we'll be talking to John Crumpler, who's the lead analyst and podcast host for Texans Wire. That's then followed by our B55 segment. That's when I ask John 5 questions, and his responses must be completed within 55 seconds. The 55 is John's way of paying tribute to the great Doug Buffone, his uncle, his mentor, and a man who played 15 seasons with the Bears and wore number 55. We then finish things up with a free-for-all that we call Buffone's Basement, where Aldo Gandia joins John and me, and the 3 of us go over an array of Bears topics, and we've got plenty to discuss tonight. John, go ahead. Take it away.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you, Alyssa. Like you said, our guest tonight is the lead analyst and podcast co-host of the Texans Wire. We now welcome John Crumpler to Buffone 55. John, great name. Thanks for being on. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Guys, John, Alyssa, thanks for having me on. I'm fired up to talk some football after that intro. That's quite the good production there.
Hey, this is a high-energy show, so we got to keep it going. And whenever you're a Bears fan or you're a Bears analyst, you got to keep screaming unless people are going to fall asleep. So we got to keep yelling. We got to keep the energy up a little bit here. But I am really interested in this matchup because these are 2 teams that they're kind of in a very similar situation on where they're at within the hierarchy of the NFL, what their expectations are, and it's more about what the future holds rather than what the present holds. But I do want to start off with this? I want to know, obviously the Texans have had 2 winless weeks here, but they've kept things close. So what is the overall feeling right now around this Texans team, where they're at presently and where they're going?
The narrative around the Texans right now is that it was the great summer of Davis Mills optimism is what I call it. That in conjunction with Lovie Smith comes in, and a franchise that's kind of been the laughingstock of the NFL the last 2 years. Lovie's working to make them more widely respected around the league and change how players and coaches alike talk about them. And what I would say 2 weeks in is the Davis Mills train has come into a screeching halt. The Texans outplayed the Colts and the Broncos through 3 quarters in both games. And in both games, the fourth quarter offense has just absolutely failed to get it done. So we're coming into week 3 without a signature win. You guys have the 49ers game and obviously a tough loss to the Packers, but the Texans are at 0-1-1 and wondering, can Mills and the offense start to match the energy of Lovie Smith defense playing really well?
And John, you were talking about Davis Mills, and, I'm curious exactly what is your early evaluation of him through these first 2 games, and what does he need to do on Sunday in order to get over that hump?
So Davis Mills, last season, what we saw is he has the tools to be a starting NFL quarterback. He has good mobility for the modern game. He's not going to kill you on his legs, but he can run bootleg passes and move the pocket like you need to. He has good arm strength to make the throws downfield, and he's a good decision maker. But coming into this year, Davis is really struggling at those intermediate to deep throws, really anything to the sideline past 15 yards. He's had some accuracy issues. So the rest of the season kind of looks like, can Davis move the chains? Because the defense is playing exceptionally well. I think they're one of the most yards allowed teams in the NFL, but they're not giving up a lot of points. So the offense doesn't look like they're going to have to do a ton. So for Davis, it's about, can you improve in that intermediate to deep area? And can you cut down, really turnovers aren't his issue, but can you put your playmakers in a position to win in Pep Hamilton's offense?
You just mentioned Pep Hamilton. We actually have a user question from Jordan Silvera. He said he'd love to ask you how you feel Pep Hamilton is progressing Davis Mills, and has the offensive line started to stabilize with Kenyon Green being inserted into the lineup and Titus Howard at right tackle?
So first, I'll answer the question about the offensive line. I do think it looks like an improved unit this year. Kenyon Green looks the part. He finally got his first start. He didn't start for any of the preseason or week 1, but he looks like the run mauler that the Texans want him to be. Meanwhile, Titus Howard is someone that there was a lot of optimism about when this is his 4th year now, or 3rd year, and he's finally starting full-time at right tackle. And he hasn't been the guy that they really thought he would. So overall, it's probably an average NFL unit, but it's improved from last year. And is Pep progressing Davis? Some would say no. The scheme that they've built is really just it's kind of Lovie Smith's philosophy. They want to run the football a lot, and part of how they do that is they've been dressing it up. There isn't a lot of pre-snap motion, but they do run out of a lot of different formations, and everything they do is built off the play action. But Pep Hamilton looks like an offensive coordinator right now who doesn't trust Davis Mills to attack vertically. He's not dialing up a lot of deep passes, and what it's doing is defenses are coming and sitting in on everything. And if you want to give the ball to Rex Burkhead a lot, you can't have defenses doing that.
You mentioned the run game a little bit there, but Chicago's run defense giving up an average of 189.5 yards on the ground through 2 weeks, and that remains a pretty big concern. How has the Houston run game fared so far, and are they going to be the centerpiece whenever they clash heads on Sunday?
I think that's exactly how the Texans will want to play and win this game, hopefully. They're a team that really prides themselves on how they run the ball and eating time of possession, and then allowing the defense, which is certainly the better of their 2 units this year, to get the job done. Dameon Pierce in week 2, obviously a big fantasy football sensation, lots of preseason hype for Pierce. He finally got the snaps that most would say he deserves in that backfield last week. And they're going to come in and try to feed him a lot. I saw Chicago's averaging, I think they're giving up 5.1 yards per carry. And I think Houston's going to try to feed Dameon Pierce and put Mills in a lot of short 2nd and 3rd down situations to go with that. But that is the backbone of the Texans offense and what they'll want to do in this game.
Yeah, and so while you mentioned the run game is going to be what the Texans intend to do, especially looking at the Bears giving up that many, almost 190 rushing yards a game, Aaron Rodgers, picked apart Bears rookie cornerback Kyler Gordon on Sunday night, and when Houston does go to the passing game, I'm assuming they're going to do the same. So, what do the Texans have at receiver outside of Brandon Cooks as the big name? What's been your evaluation of that group?
It's probably one of the weaker receiving groups in the NFL. I think Brandon Cooks is probably better than any receiver on the Packers. But after that, I think the Packers probably have some pieces that the Texans just don't have right now. The big name outside of Brandon Cooks is going to be Nico Collins. He's their big 6'4" wide receiver from Michigan, a guy that Nick Caserio parted with 3 picks to go up and get in the 3rd round during the 2021 draft. But he hasn't quite been able to put it all together. They finally tried to feature him last week against the Broncos. He got 10 targets, but ultimately that was just 4 receptions, 56 yards, and one of the worst offensive performances overall by the team that we can remember. And after that, it's a host of guys who I would call them incomplete NFL receivers. Chris Moore is a guy who plays really hard. He does a lot of things well, but nothing great. Philip Dorsett, since being drafted in the 1st round by the Indianapolis Colts, he's a vertical burner, but they're not putting him on the field a lot. And then the Texans love Chris Conley for some reason. So he's already been pulled up from the practice squad twice, and it would not surprise me to see him again. The wild card might be Tyler Johnson, a name people might remember if they play Dynasty Fantasy. He's been buried on the depth chart for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Davis Mills actually commented today that he's coming along with the playbook. So hopefully Tyler Johnson gets a shot soon. But overall, Alyssa, it's not a very scary receiving unit if you can figure out what to do with Brandon Cooks thus far.
I want to parlay back into Davis Mills real quick because we have a user question from Chubbs here. And it says, I have a question. Is it that the Texans don't trust Mills? Or are they quietly behind the scenes in the quarterback draft market for next year? It seemed like this might be a prove it year for Davis Mills, but it also might be a very short leash to prove it before they start thinking about what they could do with their 1st round pick next year. What do you think is the mindset at the quarterback position? Because I don't know what kind of a leash Lovie Smith has been given. We're not sure what kind of a leash that Davis Mills has been given. So what is your perspective on that as far as the quarterback position in Houston?
I think I'll start by saying I think Lovie Smith has a pretty long leash. Nick Caserio, for as much credibility as he brings with 20 years in New England, has already gone for one head coach, one and done during his first year as a GM, when many would have said David Culley won enough games to stay in the job. I think those of us who watched it understand why they decided to part ways. But Lovie Smith's going to be here for at least this season, so I don't think there's an incentive to They don't have to win. But on the other hand, I do think they'd like to win. This is a team Lovie Smith spent the offseason almost incessantly talking about Davis Mills and how impressed he was with him. Davis Mills is someone that was voted captain. So maybe they don't believe, like, quietly, but up front, they're preaching that Davis Mills is a guy that they believe could be the future of the franchise. When Caserio gets in front of the podium as a general manager and from the New England tree, he's a little bit more coy about what he actually thinks. But every other part of this team was preaching all offseason that this is a guy they really believed in. This is someone, I think national analysts were coming out and saying Davis Mills might be the quarterback who surprises us from the 2021 class. And why it's a little disappointing, I think fans are having a hard time with the results that have actually manifested themselves on the field thus far.
And one of those weapons they tried to bolster the offense with, where they kind of took a flyer on O.J. Howard. And I saw that I haven't watched a ton of Texans tape, but I saw that he did. I believe he did. Yeah, he did have I believe he did have a touchdown. I don't know if it was the first one or second. Was it two? So what has been the return on investment in O.J. Howard? Is this a guy that the Texans are high on, or is he a roster filler until they can kind of craft the team the way they want to?
I mean, this will tell you about the embarrassing state of the Texans, but O.J. Howard was a guy I wanted so bad in the offseason. I was pounding the table in March, and of course, he takes $4 million guaranteed from Buffalo, but ultimately they decided they'd rather pay it to him than give him the roster spot. And I think the returns have been about as good as you could ask for someone who was brought in 6 days before the season started. During the opener against the Indianapolis Colts, he played only 17% of the snaps, but he caught 2 touchdowns. He's a big physical presence, and really the Texans have 3 tight ends on their roster. It's Pharaoh Brown, Brevin Jordan, and O.J. Howard. And Brevin Jordan he's kind of like a big receiver. He's not really a blocker, and in an offense that wants to run so much, OJ Howard has come in and he's just more talented than Pharaoh Brown. So he's been learning the playbook and having to ramp up that way, but the early returns look good. He went from, I think, 17% to 29%. And this could be the week with Brevin Jordan potentially out with an ankle injury that we start to see him play over half the snaps and like try to become a key offensive cog.
And John, Houston's offensive line gave up 3 sacks on Davis Mills in last week's loss. And, the Bears have some guys that know how to get after the quarterback: Dominique Robinson, Travis Gibson, Robert Quinn. And I'm curious, who do you think needs to step up in pass protection? And what's been your overall evaluation so far of this group?
I think it's a very average offensive line. I think left tackle Laramie Tunsil, who's pretty infamous at this point for the Miami trade, not to mention his own draft day experience. But he's been as advertised. He's a very good pass protecting left tackle. But on the other side, Titus Howard is a guy who had a lot of expectations coming in, a lot of votes of confidence from the coaching staff, and he has not performed as you would expect. With the Texans, that interior of the offensive line is weak. Their center, Justin Britt, he seemingly has retired. He's taking time off right now for non-football related reasons. Coach Lovie Smith says they're going to give him as much time as he needs. But the interior is weak, and I don't think there's a lot you can do that. But the right side and Howard, he'll need to step up. And also Davis Mills himself, I think late in the game against Indianapolis, if you watch, he took sacks against 3-man pressures late in the game that you just absolutely cannot take if you're going to be a franchise quarterback. So like the rest of the problems of Houston's offense, I would say it's multifactorial, but probably Titus Howard on that right side would be a great place for them to start.
I want to go and talk a little bit about Lovie Smith and the Texans' overall defense, because it's a scheme that people are, at least people in Chicago, are very familiar with. And that's why we have another user question from Jordan Silvera is, would love to know what you're noticing from this defensive scheme. And if you know if there's been any transformation from Lovie going from the defensive coordinator to the head coach, is it still that vanilla cover 2 that we became so accustomed to in Chicago?
I think Lovie Smith said this offseason that cover 2 is like R&B, like it'll never go out of style, was his quote. And so, yes, it's still a lot of cover 2, but I think Lovie has reflected on how his experience went in Tampa and his college experience in Illinois. And we are seeing a more varied fronts. They drafted Derek Stingley 3rd overall, and they're letting him play a lot of man coverage, which traditionally you would not see as much in the cover 2. They took safety Jalen Petrie out of Baylor, 37th overall. And they've kind of created a more traditional box safety, Jamal Adams type role for him than we previously saw from Lovie's defense, where he gets to play up top. He'll come down to play with the linebackers in the box. Lovie's trying to play to the team's strengths with their relative lack of talent, but this is still your base 4-3 defense from Lovie that you know and love.
And let's stay with that defense just a little bit, because I think if the Bears are going to be successful, and what they're trying to do to be successful is just run the ball. We've talked a little bit about this already, but if that's how the Bears are going to win football games, is that how they can beat the Texans? If they're going to run the ball 30, 40 times and let Justin Fields throw it 11 to 15 times, can they get by the Texans doing that?
I still cannot believe that's an NFL game plan in 2022. But for Bears fans and for people who have David Montgomery in fantasy, I think they're going to be very pleased. This is a suspect Texans running defense. Their leading tackler right now is safety Jonathan Owens, because so many things keep getting to the second level against their defense. It's a team you can run on. They don't have elite interior guys. They have guys who I think they play really well for who they are. Undrafted free agent Kurt Hinish gets a lot of playing time to give you the idea of what the interior rotation is looking like. But the linebacker group is headlined by veterans Christian Kirksey and Kamu Grugier-Hill, and they're big names who've been around the league for a while, and they have a lot of tackles, but they also miss a lot of gap assignments. So this is a team that you can run on much easier than you can pass it with. I almost think that the Broncos head coach Nathaniel Hackett's taken a lot of heat, and he practically gave Houston the game because he wouldn't give it to Javonte Williams, who I think was averaging over 5 yards a carry, and he kept letting Russ throw, who I think maybe ended up completing over 50% of his passes by the end of the game. But like I said, the Texans probably feel like their strengths align with the best ways you can beat Chicago. Chicago should feel the same way coming into this game, that this is a team you can run the ball on.
Yeah, this definitely feels like another game where we should expect to see a lot of running, but hopefully Luke Getsy lets Justin Fields throw a little bit more than 11 times in this game. And speaking of that passing game, the Bears far and away have the worst in the entire league. So I was curious, are there going to be opportunities for Justin Fields to find success downfield against this Texans secondary?
The Texans starting corner duo, it's honestly pretty good compared to it was a year ago. Derek Stingley is enormously talented. I think everyone remembers his dominant freshman season at LSU, and what he flashed in college is showing up right now. But he's having some pains translating to the NFL game. Is there a receiver on the Bears that can make him pay in that way like Cortland Sutton did last week? I'm not sure about that. And meanwhile, they got a bargain signing late in free agency. Steven Nelson has come from Philadelphia, and he's playing opposite, and he's played fantastic, much better than you would expect from where the Texans were able to sign him. I think if Justin Fields is going to attack vertically, those opportunities are going to come from how much can he manipulate the linebacking group into giving him the throws that he wants in the middle of the field. And then the cover two has its holes. When the Texans go to zone like they do like to, can you find them and can you beat them? Because they're there every game they've played this season. I mean, that's how Russell Wilson beat the Texans last week, is on 3rd and 16. He found Cortland Sutton. The safety is not there. Derek Stingley's not there. And you just put the ball there. So if Fields can read the defense and prepare properly, and I think he's going to have the linebackers in a bit of a bad situation with how he can move, then there's a good chance to open things up and attack down the field.
You know, we talked about the opportunities that the Texans' run defense may give to the Bears, but another concern around the Chicago offense is keeping Justin Fields upright. So what can we expect from the Texans pass rush going into Sunday? Are they going to be able to get after him and push him out of the pocket, or will he have a clean pocket to actually scan the field and throw to, give it, albeit maybe 10 to 15 passes he throws? Is he going to be able to stay upright?
I mean, it may be 2022, but this question might come down to what version of Jerry Hughes shows up in Chicago on Sunday. Hughes had 2 sacks and a pick against Matt Ryan during the first game against Indianapolis, but he kind of came back down to earth last week in Denver and looked like the rotational pass rusher that we expected. The group as a whole is headlined by third year from Florida, Jonathan Grenard. He had 8 sacks last year, and he's looking like he could be that double-digit sack guy that the Texans need. But after that, it's very much a rotational group. At edge rusher and the interior offensive line, Malik Collins is probably the best pass rusher of them, but that group rotates so well. So it's no one's going to wreck your game plan on the Texans defensive line, but they play very disciplined. They know their roles. And with the way they rotate guys, they do get opportunities. So I don't think Fields will be comfortable. I don't think anyone's going to ruin him like Myles Garrett did last year, though.
And we always get a kick out of talking about special teams on this show. I mean, I think it's just PTSD at this point. But I was curious if you could give us a quick profile of what we can expect from this Texan special teams.
I mean, I think it's a very average special teams unit. Kaimi Fairbairn is the kicker. He's one of the last. He might be the last contract from the Bill O'Brien era. No, my bad. Laramie Tunsil's here too. But Kaimi Fairbairn might be the 3rd or 4th highest paid kicker in the league. He's got a big leg. He'll miss some kicks that he should based on previous seasons. It's not a dynamic kick return team. I do think their special teams on the defensive side have improved, though, based on the preseason and what we've seen through 2 games, though. So not one that I would be surprised if they gave up a huge return, but any given Sunday, right?
And this could come down to a home run play. Who does get the return? Who does have the pick six? We'll see. It could come down to that. Before we get you out of here, John, I need to get your prediction on the game, because this could be another Lovie Smith revenge game, or it's in Soldier Field. So it's what do you think is going to go into this game, and who do you think comes out on top?
Right now, I'm inclined to pick Chicago. I think Davis Mills' splits on the road are dramatically different from how he's played at home. The Texans have not been able to put it all together offensively, and I think how they look on defense, I think the pieces in Chicago match up that they're not going to try to beat you through the air. They can run the ball. I think Justin Fields and what you guys offer formationally can take advantage of some of the mismatches that we have in that front 7. I might say a 24-21 game, but it's one that does feel like whatever team gets a big play, these are both teams watching them that have to work really hard to score the football. Like everything has to go right if you're going to score a touchdown on any given drive. So last week for us, when Brandon Cooks dropped a pass that he couldn't, that was it. There was not another opportunity in the game. So whoever hits the home run ball, like you said, and gets a score they maybe don't deserve, probably comes away with this one. Right now, I'll take Chicago until the Texans offense can show me otherwise.
Now, Alyssa knows this as well as I do. When guests come on our show and pick the Bears, that's usually the kiss of death, and the Bears end up losing. So I think that that might work out to your favor that you picked the Bears.
We'll take it.
Yeah. Hey, before we kick you out of here, can you let our listeners and viewers know where they can find your work, where they can listen to your stuff? Because I'm sure you'll be doing some kind of preview or there's some kind of breakdown with the Bears and everything like that. So how can they interact with you on social media? Where can they find your work?
Yeah, absolutely. You guys can follow me at John H. Crumpler on Twitter. Also, if you want to get to know the team in the next few days, all of my work and my team's work is at the Texans Wire. So my articles are there, and I'll be tweeting out clips as we get closer to the game. So go Texans, and guys, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Hey, John, excellent information, excellent guest. We appreciate you being on, and whenever the Texans meet up with the Bears in the Super Bowl, we'll have you back on.
Absolutely. It's going to happen. We just have to manifest a little harder.
We'll speak it into existence. That's right. You got it.
Another draft class.
That's right. No,
the rebuild is now.
There is no rebuild. We go right now. But thank you so much for being on, and we'll be back with more Buffone 55 right after this.
Ellis Hall, since I came here, has been expanded twice, and both times after we were gone, by the way. So we never got it. But I mean, it was tiny.
Do you think that Olin Kreutz would politely ask you to leave the weight room because it was so crowded?
I told you what Olin used to say to me.
I know, that's why I'm asking.
No, and that was at 5:00 when there's no players around.
Olin is
Here, I'll get the out of my weight room. And I go,
I think I got a commercial here.
Welcome back to Buffone 55. Now it's time for our B55 segment. That's when I ask John 5 questions, and his responses must be completed within 55 seconds. The 55 is John's tribute to the great Doug Buffone, his uncle, who played 15 seasons with the Bears and wore number 55. So, John, that was just brutal on Sunday night. So, are you ready for this?
Yeah. I gotta have to do it eventually. So let's do it.
Okay, so here we go. It was another primetime game, and you know how much we hate primetime games against the Packers, and it was once again another disappointing loss. You know, there was plenty to be frustrated about in this game, but I'm curious, what was your biggest takeaway from this loss? You know the drill, 55 seconds.
Man, I was frustrated with this one. Maybe I was more frustrated because it was the Packers, but mainly I was frustrated because there were chances to win this ball game. Even though they struggled in a bunch of areas, there were opportunities to make this a one-score game in the fourth quarter. It was aggravating because the defense couldn't get off the field when it was like 2nd and 28 at one point. It was aggravating to see some pretty stagnant offensive play, but given a few days to cool down from it, I guess it was a positive that they did enough to scratch and claw their way back into the game. And it could have gotten way out of hand, but the game was actually interesting in the fourth quarter. So don't get me wrong. I am mad they lost. And God knows I just want the Bears to beat the Packers one time when they're not supposed to beat the Packers. But we have seen much more embarrassing performances than the one we saw on Sunday night. I'm trying to keep it somewhat positive. After all, it was only week 2, and it's only week 3 of the season. Can't get too crazy.
You know, that's great perspective. And that's, thinking about this, obviously, right after the loss, it's just infuriating. Oh, yeah. And you need to kind of sleep on it just to kind of get some perspective. And I remember after this game, I just remember thinking, okay, wow, that was a really humbling moment. And it's a reminder that we need to manage expectations for this team this year. Because when we go back before the Niners game, no one expected the Bears to do anything. Like we said, we expected them probably to be 0-2 after the first 2 weeks. And this is a team that they can't hang with the big dogs yet, right? And that wasn't the expectation. So we have to think about what this season is supposed to be. Again, don't think they're a 2 to 3, 4 win team, but games like this are going to happen. And like you said, they kept it closer than we're used to with some of these Packers games. So, I mean, like you said, it sucks because it's the Packers. And like you said, we want to beat them, especially when you're not supposed to beat them. When you're playing Aaron Rodgers, you want to beat them. You want to wipe that smug grin off of his face. And, unfortunately, hey, it didn't happen now. Maybe when it goes to Soldier Field, and try not to get my hopes up. But I mean, we'll see. Maybe, hopefully, Kyler Gordon kind of rebounds after that. But yeah, just thinking of this game, it kind of, after sleeping on it, it just kind of, I was like, okay, the Bears are 1-1, and it is what it is.
Yeah, I keep saying this, but it wasn't embarrassing. They had an opportunity. They at least proved that they should at least be on the field at least. So it wasn't like oh my God, they're going to talk about how bad this blowout was. It wasn't there. And I know those are low expectations, but that's what we're working with right now. We're building slowly but surely.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking to your point about how it wasn't embarrassing, this game, like you said, they were in it in the fourth quarter. And there was a pivotal play in the fourth quarter, that 4th and goal where Justin Fields was marked short of the goal line. That was probably one of the most pivotal, the pivotal play of the game at that point. I'm curious, what were your thoughts on the play call? And did you think that Fields broke the plane? 55 seconds or on the clock?
Oh boy, did I hate this one. This gave me flashbacks of last year. This might surprise some of you, but I really don't yell much during Bears games. Maybe once or twice I will actually shout something at the TV, but the second I saw them go into shotgun from the 1-inch line, I was screaming at the TV. Before the ball was even snapped, I was irate. They pounded the ball down Green Bay's throat the whole way down the field. David Montgomery was cooking, and you have an opportunity to line up man-to-man and make a statement in Green Bay, at Lambeau, that, hey, you might have more talent, but we're going to punch you in the mouth and we're going to score. But that isn't what happened. They decided to get cute. And yes, I believe he got in. I believe it was a touchdown. But for me, it wasn't just an opportunity to score. It was an opportunity to make a statement. And unfortunately, they missed out on both of those things. They didn't score. They didn't make a statement. And honestly, this one got me heated because maybe I'm too old school, but just snap the ball and punch it in.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was screaming too, so I think that we were in sync in that one. Like, as soon as okay, 4th and inches, okay, give it to Fields. I mean, Justin Fields can get like half of an inch, you know what I mean? Like, he can get there. And the fact they lined up in shotgun, I'm like, why not line up, on the half-yard line when you can line up 5 yards behind the goal line? It's just infuriating. And like you said, I think he got in. I mean, I think looking at the replay, we saw that he got in. Justin Fields said it. David Montgomery was right there. He saw that he got in. And he even, as we know, obviously it wouldn't be a Packers game if there weren't some officiating controversy. And I think we got it there, and Montgomery kind of alluded to that. So, I mean, it was just frustrating. I mean, especially after that first offensive series where I was watching, I'm like, oh my gosh, what is this? I'm not used to this. It was efficient. You're capitalizing on the strengths of this offense with their run game and with Fields and moving him around and having him third on field. I mean, and then you have obviously all the 3 and outs that came after that. But then on that play, it was a rough one for Luke Getsy.
Yeah, I was angry because I am something about not just scoring, but proving the point that goes along with that. We're going to line up and we're going to push you back and we're going to score. And all of a sudden it's a 1-score game. And once again, I think he got in. It was a touchdown, but and there was plenty of questionable calls that went along with that. Do I think it cost the Bears the game? No, but there were questionable calls throughout the entire game, but it is what it is at this point. I've calmed down a little bit until I started talking about it again.
Right. And like you said, it's not the reason they lost. Right. But I mean, you can also think about how the game changes because this is a game of momentum switches, right? Like the Bears get in, completely different game. Obviously, you have to ask the defense to go out and do what they haven't been able to do the entire game, which is stop the run. But when you have that momentum on your side, who knows? We'll never know. So we gotta just kind of move on from it. I guess, at this point.
It would have been nice to see it play out.
It would have been nice. Although I feel like we kind of would have gotten our heart broken anyways. I'm just used to that. But speaking of Justin Fields, John, the second-year quarterback only attempted 11. Yes, that's right. 11 passes, which is 6 less than what he attempted when there was a monsoon coming down in Soldier Field. So what do you think is behind the Bears' passing philosophy through the first 2 weeks? You have 55 seconds.
I don't know. It could be a collection of things. I think Danny Shimon made a good point on the post game show. This could all just be a very strict plan for Justin Fields, and they're treating this like his rookie season, and they're not going to divert from that. They're going to limit his passing attempts, and they're going to run the ball a lot, and they're going to try to keep games close that way. And I mean, that makes sense, but eventually you're going to be down multiple scores and you're going to need to air it out a little bit. It could also be the pass protection. The Bears clearly, run block better than they pass protect. So maybe they're trying to keep Fields upright and not get gun shy when he's in the pocket. What I don't think, however, is that, and some might disagree with this, is that they just flat out don't trust Justin Fields. I don't know if I buy into that. We see the raw talent. We see the arm talent. I don't think they're giving up on a 23-year-old quarterback prospect who is actually younger than some of the rookie quarterbacks this year. But really, to be honest, only the coaching staff knows what's going on.
Yeah, I don't think it's a matter of trust. I mean, Fields, obviously, and Eberflus both said that the game plan was to run the ball. Obviously, you don't want to see Justin Fields only throw 11 passes. I think it was only 5 in the second half, which is kind of ludicrous because they were down, and that's when you should be throwing the ball. So I was a little surprised by that, but I don't think it's a lack of faith. I mean, you kind of look at the two defenses that the Bears have faced too. I mean, obviously the weather conditions too in week 1, and again, the Bears are going to run the football. That is their bread and butter at this point. But you do want to see, especially heading into week 3 against the Texans, even though, again, it's going to be a run-heavy game plan, you do want to see them open things up and let Fields air it downfield because, obviously the expectations for this season aren't that the Bears are going to be contenders, but you do want to see Justin Fields take that next step in his development. And you're not going to be able to see that if he's only attempting 11 passes a game.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I guess I'm going to reserve my judgment for this until we're maybe 10, 11 games into the season to see if they are really actually have this plan where they're really have the training wheels on. And then in week 5, they open it up more. And then in week 7, they open it up more. And by week 11 and 12, he's attempting, 20, 25 passes or potentially even 30 passes, which is not uncommon in the NFL in 2022. So let's see what actually happens. Let's see if the pass protection gets a little bit better. I love the comment in the chat by Cliff Victoria. Let's get Lucas back at center and see if it affects the offensive line and Justin Fields passing. Maybe they feel a lot better with Lucas Patrick at center. Well, there's a lot to be determined, and I don't think that we can make a very strong opinion after 2 games, one of which was played basically underwater, and then this one was played in Lambeau. So let's just pump the brakes a little bit and see and look at this holistically when we have a bigger sample size.
Yeah, it's going to be a long season. we got plenty more of these games coming. So
we can say that for sure. We can say that it will be a long season.
It's going to be long in multiple ways, both in length and obviously how the what's going to do to Bears fans. But okay, John. So we're looking ahead to Sunday's game, the Packers game. It's done. It's over. And they have the Texans, a team that's kind of more on their level. And I'm curious, who are 2 Bears players that you think need to step up in order to get things back on track? You have plenty to choose from here, but you only have 55 seconds. The clock starts when you do.
See, that's the tough part. So I guess I'm going to start with Darnell Mooney, and I'm saying it with my heart and I'm saying it with my wallet because first off, I drafted the guy in fantasy and he's averaging about 1 point per game. But other than that, I'm a huge Darnell Mooney fan. I mocked him to the Bears before the 2020 draft. I love his skill set. And look, I know there aren't a lot of balls to go around right now, but your number 1 receiver probably needs to average more than 2 targets per game. He has the speed to blow the lid off of defenses, and with the defenses already creeping up to play the Bears run game, Mooney should be a home run possibility almost every possession. And then another guy, I got to go with Cole Kmet. This dude got some serious hype in camp. And while I know he's never going to be Travis Kelce or George Kittle or that kind of game breaker, he needs to catch more balls. Only 2 targets, 0 catches, and a drop. I don't expect him to catch 8 balls every game for 100 yards, but he needs to secure a few catches and keep the chains moving. So those are 2 guys that had some expectations that I think need to show up. And maybe it's not all their fault, but you need to see them more involved in the game plan.
Yeah, and that's something that Eberflus brought up too when he was asked, can this passing game thrive without Mooney and Kmet being involved? And he simply said no, and that they need to get both of them more involved. And like you said, you have Mooney in fantasy. I have Cole Kmet, and I just he's been on the bench, and I'm like, I thought I got like a steal, and I thought he was gonna be like an essential part of this passing game, which again we're 2 weeks in.
Yeah.
So hopefully that's something that needs to change, and those would be my two players as well. And I mean, I'm curious because Roquan Smith popped up on the injury report on Wednesday with a hip injury. He didn't practice. But if he is good to go, he's someone that I need to see step up in this game. You know, for someone that wants to get paid $20 million a year and be one of the top paid linebackers in this league, he needs to start playing special, right? I mean, he hasn't looked special in these last couple of weeks, and in the run game especially. I mean, you look at the box score, and I think it can be deceiving. Yes, he tied for 11 tackles with Nicholas Morrow, but again, a lot of those are coming after the fact, you know what I mean? So,
Right.
I mean, he really needs to have a big game, assuming that he is out there. And I also want to see a big game from Kyler Gordon. I know he had a rough go of it. Poor Aaron Rodgers just picked on that kid, and you felt so bad. And you knew it was going to come. Rodgers is a pro.
Absolutely.
Like, he knows, like, he knew what he was doing. So I would like to see a nice rebound game from Kyler Gordon. I know there's going to be it's growing pains. He's a rookie. It's to be expected. And he's playing outside in the nickel. It's a lot to shoulder as a rookie. So, I mean, looking at the defense, so I think Roquan and Kyler are the two that I might be looking for.
Yeah, Roquan Smith's a good name because you wonder, he did not have the traditional offseason and did not have a traditional training camp. And you wonder if he's all there. And so physically, is it going to take until week 4 or 5 before he's Roquan Smith that we remember? And obviously, he's playing for a new contract, whether it be with the Bears or somebody else or potentially getting franchise tag, which I think is more likely. But if he is playing for a new contract and he wants $20-25 million, he's going to have to do more than what he's doing right now. And I'm not saying he's not a great player. He is a great player. He just needs to ramp it up a little bit. So I don't know what's going on. I don't know if there is a lingering injury. Sometimes sometimes guys that don't participate as much in camp are, they it's a hamstring issue or a soft tissue issue or some kind of lingering thing that just happens. So we'll see. And I have a lot of confidence that Roquan Smith can be that guy and will be that guy. You just want to see it, and maybe he does it against the Texans.
Yeah, and speaking to your point about how obviously he missed training camp and then he missed the preseason, and he's playing a new position in that Uber-Cleveland defense. So
very true.
Yeah, so he needs the reps, right? Like anyone. He's kind of like in Kyler Gordon's position or Jaquan Brisker, these rookies who are kind of, it's a little different, obviously, but he is playing in this new defense and new position for the first time. So it's going to take a little bit of time. But again, the injury thing, we'll see how that works out. But if he is able to go on Sunday, I think this is a great opportunity for him to get back on track.
Yeah, that's a great point about it. It is a new defense. It is a new position, and he didn't have a whole lot of reps in it before the season started. So that's worth noting.
Yeah. Okay, John. So I know we're 2 games in, but we're going to try some way too early season analysis here. So after 2 games, the Bears are 1-1. So from what you've seen so far, are the Bears exceeding expectations, not meeting expectations, or simply meeting expectations? Go ahead and turn the clock off. This one should be fun. Go for it.
Wow, it really is too early for this to be doing this, but that's why we're here. So let's have some fun. Look, most folks had the Bears at 0-2 at this point. Coming out of a 2-game stint with San Fran and Green Bay, 1-1 kind of seems like a win given the Bears' expectations for the year. And you know what? They battled in both games. They weren't completely embarrassed like we were talking about. They created avenues to compete in both games. So I'll say they're slightly exceeding expectations. There are a ton of things to clean up, but they don't look utterly incompetent like they did at times last year. So let's go even further. Let's have a lot of fun. Let's get crazy. I think the Bears have some opportunities to make some hay in the next 4 to 5 weeks. They have the Texans this week at home. Then they are at the Giants, who I know are playing pretty well right now, but their margin of victory has been razor thin. Then they have the Vikings, which will be a tough test, but then they get the Commanders and the Patriots, neither of which have been incredibly impressive, and they get Washington on a short week at home for Thursday Night Football. So there is a possibility they steal 3 of 5 going into week 8, and that would give them a 4-3 record. I think most Bears fans would take that. Also, maybe a 4-3 record would get the national media off their back for a second, but probably not. But a guy can dream, can he? That'll do it for B55. We'll be back with more Buffone 55, and we'll go into the basement after this.
Zim, Joe, Vinny, and Gonzo. Join these White Sox fanatics every Monday night for the South Burbs Hitmen. You're going to be treated to great guests, top analysis, smart debates. South Burbs Hitmen with Zim, Joe, Benny, and Gonzo, only on the Barroom Network.
Welcome back to Buffone 55. It's time for Buffone's Basement. You know what that means. We go down, we shake them, we push them, we try to get them up. Aldo Gandia, are you awake? No, you're not.
I'm muted. How are you guys? Good show.
Doing great. Appreciate you being on. It's gonna be. We got a lot to talk about. I wanna talk about Justin Fields real quick because that's been just the talking point throughout the week about what he said in his post-game press conference, what he said today. I don't want to spend too much time on this because, quite frankly, I just don't care. But let's talk about it today. Aldo, what did you think about what he said today to kind of reiterate what he said and what he meant about fans not putting in work and the players caring more than the fans?
Yeah, he could have been more articulate about that after the game, and even today he could have been more articulate, but I don't have any problem. Didn't have any problem with it Sunday night when I heard it, and don't have a problem with it now. These guys are invested in playing football. The reason why these guys are top-notch athletes is because they spend hours and hours and hours in the weight room, training, studying playbooks, practicing. Their life revolves around playing football. And so if they're going to say something inaccurate, or they're not on top of news events, or they're not sensitive to this or that, I usually take that with a grain of salt because they're so focused on being the absolute best. And so I usually give them a slide on stuff like that.
Yeah, my thought on this was I just don't care about it. I didn't think anything of it when I heard it. I hate that it was a thing. I mean, it obviously did get blown up for, all that 11-second clip that got blown up on social media. I'm sure Bears PR didn't love it. And like you said, absolutely, it probably could have been articulated a little bit better. But you know what? If Justin Fields goes out and throws for 250 yards, 2 touchdowns, and runs for another one against the Texans, no one's going to be talking about this. Listen, I know that fans do invest emotionally and financially into teams, and they're going to be here a lot longer than a lot of the players are. But what he says makes sense. The only fans that woke up sore after that game are the ones that were too hungover. So I think that if you look at this holistically, what would you have thought if he said, you know what, the fans care more than we do? what would that have been? How would that have gone over? You know what? I bet Bears fans care a lot more than the players do. Well, then you open up a whole nother conversation. So I think that he probably just could have avoided that altogether. I hate that it was a thing. I hate that people were talking about it. I hate that it's even a thing going into this game because you want to see results on the field, and then winning is the biggest deodorant for that kind of stuff. I don't think it's a big deal. And let's just get back to playing the game. Alyssa, do you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I didn't mind. I really didn't care. I mean, he mentioned how this loss, and I get it. It's the Packers, how it stung a little bit more. Yeah. And so obviously he was a little chicky. I mean, imagine someone asking us, like going on a radio show or something, or doing like a podcast. I'm sure you guys felt like that immediately after that loss. And we're just fans. Now imagine, like you were saying, putting your blood, sweat, and tears and preparing an entire week, or even an entire off season, and just kind of like getting to this game too. And to have that happen, I'm sure obviously that's not the result that Justin Fields wanted. And I really have no issues with it. I'm surprised it became a thing. But again, if the result was different, I mean, he wouldn't have said that to begin with, though.
Right.
And then we're not talking about it, right? It's like after that Packers loss, it's like Bears fans, and I get it. Like you want something to complain about, someone to be mad at, or you know what I mean? And, unfortunately, Fields was one of those targets, and those comments and the fact that they blew up did not help matters. But I'm over it. I'm like, and the fact that he had to apologize today, I mean, like, I get it. It's optics. He could have handled it better, but I mean, he really had nothing to clear up in the first place.
Nah,
Mhm.
and I'm just you know what? I'm actually glad he was pissed off after the game because it shows that
Yeah.
he cared. He wanted to win that. He wanted to win that ball game. He was pissed that he lost to the Packers. He didn't want to talk to the media. I wouldn't want to. I mean, we're pretty raw. We have pretty raw emotion on the post game show. I can't imagine having that, and like I can't imagine being on the field on national TV and losing, and then be like, now I got to go talk about how I lost. Like I don't want to. That's the last thing I would want to do. So I get it. He's a young kid, 23 years old. He was mad that he lost, and you know what? I'm glad that he was pissed off because it shows that he wants to win. He's not like Rex Grossman who blamed like, there's other things going on. It was New Year's Eve. Like you remember when he blamed a loss on New Year's Eve?
Right.
I don't need that anymore. I don't need a guy saying I was just distracted. It was New Year's Eve and there's parties going on and I just didn't put my all into this one. Like I need a guy that is angry when he loses because he doesn't want to feel that anymore. And I think that's the kind of guy Justin Fields is. So let's just drop that to where it is and move on to something else. Let's move on to Sunday's game because that's what we care about. So
Right.
at least what Bears fans care about. So there are plenty of Bears players that need to step up. There are plenty of guys that, need to have some kind of bounce back. But let's go around. And Aldo, I'll start with you. Who's one or two guys that you think, because I went over mine in my B55 is Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet. Who do you think, whether it's defensively or offensively, needs to step up and put their stamp on the game?
Well, first and foremost, it has to be Justin Fields. Justin, we can blame the play calling, we can blame certain things, but there were opportunities out on that field that he did not take advantage of. For instance, this play has been talked about and this clip has been widely shown. This is Equanimeous St. Brown changing his route because he knew he had outside leverage and he was wide open, and Justin Fields appeared to be looking that way, but did not throw the ball. Again, this is a sure touchdown, or at least puts the ball in the red zone, and Fields did not see this. This is something that they have had to have practiced multiple times. This is just a lost opportunity, and quarterbacks are not supposed to leave points out on the field, and that's what Justin did there. Is this correctable? Of course it is, but I want to see it corrected right away. I want to see it corrected this Sunday. I don't want to see Justin Fields missing any open wide receivers. I want to see, of course, better play calling. You're asking for players, but I think that Luke Getsy needs to get on the playbook, so to speak, as well, and dig into some slant passes, some high percentage throws to get Justin in a groove. We've got this run game going. All we need is a complementary passing game. And there was a total of 19 pass attempts. He only got the ball away 11. There was either penalties or something that interrupted the other pass attempts. So when you look at it from that perspective, it's not that terrible, but nonetheless, when that game was on the line and they decided to run the ball down the field, it was effective, but it could have saved a lot of time on the clock if they would have run play action. What is wrong with play action in Chicago? I don't understand it. Offensive coordinators, first of all, they love to throw the ball. They're forced to run the ball, but when they run the ball, they don't do play action. I don't understand that. And so Luke Getsy and Justin Fields are the two guys that I need to see improvement from. And there's a long, long list. I'm sure Alyssa and you have more players to talk about, so I'll stop here.
Yeah, like when we were talking, I mentioned Roquan Smith and Kyler Gordon, who I definitely want to see. And that's a good point, too. You were talking about, like, Luke Getsy, I think, also does need to step up. I mean, you want to see, obviously, the strength of this offense is the run game, and this is the perfect opportunity to pound the ball down Houston's throats, and you want to get back in the win column. That's the thing. And that's what Justin Fields is saying. He doesn't care what he has to do as long as they're winning, but he wants to throw the ball. So I would like to see a little bit more balance on offense this week from Luke Getsy, and kind of going back to when we were talking about that first offensive drive for the Bears and just how efficient it was. You want to see more of that, right? It's kind of like Getsy had that and he got way too excited and then he just forgot what he was doing or something. So I mean, I want to see Luke Getsy step up there, and I mean, this is a good game for a lot of players to really step up and rebound following that performance. I would love, this would be the perfect opportunity too for Eddie Jackson. We talked about that. Obviously he had the game sealing interception in week 1. And you want it to be more than a moment, right? With him, this is supposed to be like a bounce back year for him. So if there are opportunities, which the Texans haven't turned the ball over, they turned it over once. But if there is an opportunity for the Bears to force these turnovers, you'd like to see Eddie Jackson get a takeaway. So I mean, we'll see. I mean, there's like way too many to choose from. So John, do you have any more?
I went on the offensive side of the ball with Kmet and Mooney. But Aldo, I think you make a good point as far as the play calling also needs to be a little more shore up. And I think that passing the ball a little bit more, play action, would love to see it, because it seems like every time they run play action, Justin Fields is operating in space. He's operating in space. He can either run it or he can set his feet and throw it. I would love to see more play action on this. So I once again, it's way too early to really judge any of these things. 2 games. I mean, we're going to talk about it obviously because we do this show every week, but I'm not going to say like this is definitively
Absolutely.
like absolute garbage that everyone needs to go. Like that's not where I'm at quite yet. I do want to talk about.
And John, just quickly before you move on, those 2 players that you highlighted, Mooney and Kmet, their targets have been relatively nothing. Cole Kmet has been passed the ball 1 time in each game, 2 targets for the entire season so far. So that's ridiculous. And Darnell Mooney, I think, has a total of 4, 3 and 1. So that's part of why they haven't been a big part of this offense. And I think this was addressed, as Alyssa knows. She listens to all these press conferences like me, and I know, John, you listen to as many as you can. But Eberflus addressed it and said, yeah, we got to do better at that. And so hopefully this Houston game against the defense that they are somewhat familiar with, the cover 2 defense, something that Fields faces in practice quite often, there should be no excuses here in game 3. So hopefully those guys get the targets and they don't drop the ball, Kokemet.
Yeah, but I do wonder though, Aldo, if they're having absurd success running the ball, because it sounds like from what John, our guest, said, they could make some serious hay running the ball if we don't see the same thing, where we don't see 20 attempts for David Montgomery and maybe 10 to 15 for Khalil Herbert, where it's just like we're running the ball down their throats. So why are we going to change it up? And maybe this would give some opportunity for some play action, where if you're just running the ball a lot, you can run some play action out of that. And I just feel like when you have a guy with 4.3 speed like Darnell Mooney, and you have that defense creeping up to play the run, there has to be opportunities where he blows the lid off the defense. There has to be some opportunities where he gets to the second level and gets behind the defense. It's just hard for me to imagine a guy who is that fast not being able to get some separation, and having Justin Fields, with the arm that he has, being able to push the ball down the field. So maybe we don't see a ton more passing attempts, but maybe we do see more passing yards, where they scheme a couple more passes down the field off of play action. Maybe he does only throw the ball 15, 16 times, but maybe he throws it for 200 yards or whatever, something a little more than what he's been throwing for. So we'll see what the Texans give them. Like you said, very familiar defense. And speaking of familiarity, Lovie Smith coming back to Soldier Field. It's not his first trip back to Soldier Field. I believe he did it back in 2014 when he was the head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, in which the Bears won that game. But what do you expect, if any, reaction to Lovie Smith? Now, he's been gone for 10 years now. Do you expect any kind of reception for him as far as what the fans are going to do as far as seeing Lovie Smith again? Do you think or is it just going to be like, you know what, we did it when he came back the first time, let's just play the game? Alyssa, I'll start with you.
I mean, I think there'll be some reaction from fans. I mean, we kind of think about the state of Bears football like now, and you think about when Lovie was here last time they went to a Super Bowl. I mean, Lovie's still remembered very fondly by fans, so I think that you'll see a reaction. Maybe not to the extent like when Matt Nagy came back in the preseason and there were boos and stuff, but still a little raw. So it's been a little bit of time, but I do think that if some fans see Lovie, you might not hear it collectively, but I do expect a positive reaction, and I'll be excited to see Lovie on the sidelines. It'll be nice to see him back at Soldier Field.
Yeah.
Yeah, I asked this question last night. I was a little bit amazed that so many people in the chat room said that Lovie should get a standing ovation. I thought, not polite applause, but it seems like so many fans said standing ovation that maybe it should be incumbent on the Chicago Bears to do a little 60-second tribute to Lovie up on the scoreboard, and then that would cue the audience to give him a nice polite applause or a standing ovation. That would be a nice gesture. I don't know if the Bears did that the last time Lovie came in here as head coach, but it wouldn't be a bad idea to do it this time. And to thank him for his years in Chicago, because he did take us to the Super Bowl. He did give us some really fun teams with a fantastic defense and some great memories. Those back-to-back wins against the Cleveland Browns. Memories, I'm forgetting what the other team was that they came back against. But a lot of fun times under Lovie.
Arizona on Monday night with
my gosh,
with Hester and Urlacher with the turnover. That was a Monday night game. I was watching it. I think I was a freshman in college when that was going on, and I was like, and everyone's just ragging on me because the Bears look like crap. I'm like, well, we got Devin Hester, and we got Urlacher and Briggs and Vasher and Peanut Tillman and the boys. Hunter Hillenmeyer, hell yeah, pretty good linebacker.
That was a fun team.
It was, and so I think that for the time it was in football, Lovie Smith was a great coach, and he is very much revered in Chicago, rightfully so. And not to mention he, did coach in Illinois, and there's a lot of Illinois / Chicago Bears fans. And so although those teams never did field exceptional offenses, and they went through a lot of coordinators, and I think the best offense they had was Devin Hester returning punts. It's almost just like if Hester didn't take it to the house, it was just like, okay, let's just try to get 3 on this, because the expectations were never, oh, we're going to score a touchdown. It's like, okay, Hester didn't take it to the house, maybe we can get 3 out of this, or you know what? Just get the defense back on the field. They'll score. They get the defense back on the field. They'll at least get a turnover, and they'll get us within the 10-yard line. That was the mentality a lot of Bears fans had watching. I know it was for me. Like I've never felt more secure in my life when the defense was on the field than those 2004, 5, 6 teams. It's just like, I love that the defense is on the field, because at any rate or any point, they're going to get a turnover and take it to the house. And then, and the best part, the kicker on that was, and all puns intended, was they're going to get 3 and out. And guess what? We get to see Devin Hester had the ball. Those were fun times, because the defense played so well. And what that did was parlay into your most exciting player, which was Devin Hester. And then you go through, the offense with, you have names out there that you remember. You have the Grossmans, the Desmond Clarks, the Bernard Berrians. I don't know if Devin Aramashidu was around at that point or not, but Mustin Muhammad, I believe, was on those teams. So you have some teams that, that were really resonate with you, and Lovie Smith was in charge of those. So yeah, I think that a little tribute, and like you said, I don't know if they did it back in 2014 or not, but at least, show Bears fans and show the Bears Nation, so to speak, that you do appreciate that. So whenever it shows that when you play well and you have success in Chicago, we're never going to forget about it. And I think that that's something that this has been a conversation for a long time about how the Bears need to go back and really pay tribute to some of those guys that played well within the organization. There's been a disconnect between the history and the present outside of the 85 Bears, other than just talking about the Super Bowl shuffle and the 85 Bears and Ditka. There's kind of a disconnect between some of those guys that helped build this franchise. So I think that it would be nice to at least show that, because they were fun teams, and that's the most amount of success they really had. I should say sustained success they had. Now, there weren't a lot of playoff victories. Obviously, they didn't win the Super Bowl, but in recent memory, that's the best we got. and it'll be nice to at least pay a little bit of homage to that. I do want to pivot a little bit to the defense, because Alyssa, you talked about it a little bit with Kyler Gordon, and obviously Jalen Johnson. They're just not throwing at him right now, which is good and bad, because it gives you opportunities to pick on the rookie. Do you think that this is this a little bit of, there's a new scheme and people are still getting used to it, or is it there's a lot of youth on this squad, or is it just both? You're having A and B work at the same time, where you have a new system plus you have a bunch of young guys in there, and you're gonna make some blunders sometimes.
Yeah, I think you nailed it with a combination of both the youth and the new scheme. But you look at this roster; it's completely new, retooled, and it's very young. I think it's one of the youngest. I think it's like top 5, top 6 youngest in the league at this point, and it's going to, again, there's going to be growing pains. It's going to take some time, but in the first game, it was encouraging from the secondary. You saw that they have some veterans out there, and then they have a couple of rookies, but we're going to have to stick with them. It's going to take some time. I think this is a good week, because you go from having Aaron Rodgers, just kind of one of the best to ever do it, go after you, and now you have Davis Mills, a second-year quarterback. So things are going to be a little easier on you. So it's a good chance for especially Kyler Gordon because, man, that was brutal. It was a brutal outing for him. And, Matt Eberflus talked to him after the game, kind of gave him some advice, and so did Jalen Johnson, which, again, mad show of respect, right? He hasn't been targeted once in coverage in 2 games, and I don't imagine that changes this week. I think we're going to see a lot of running, but, I think there's a long way for this team to go. There's a lot of youth. It's going to take some time. Again, the expectations for this squad, so far, from the secondary perspective, I think they're exceeding my expectations from, I guess, the first 2 games where I thought they would be at certain positions. Obviously, the Packers game brutal, but kind of looking at that first one. So, I definitely think youth is playing a big factor in that, and the fact that they are learning a new scheme, and it is going to take some time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, regarding Kyler Gordon, here's a guy who did not allow a touchdown reception in his entire collegiate career. And so the expectations, of course, are really, really high. But of course, you're facing Aaron Rodgers and Alan Lazard, 2 guys who have been working together now for 3 or 4 seasons, and they know, they are building close to that chemistry that Devontae Adams had with Aaron Rodgers. Not that Lazard is going to have Adams type numbers. He doesn't have the athletic skills, the wide receiving skills, but Lazard did have 10 touchdown catches this year. So Kyler was going to have a hard time with Allen going into that game. And with him, it's about how quickly he's going to recover. But there's other problems in this defense too. Jonathan Wood I think he's with the Windy City Gridiron. He posted some stats of our defensive end Mohammed and the lack of pressures that he's getting, and that this is not just an odd occurrence with him. He just has never in his career until other than 2021 had a good career with putting quarterback pressures on. So he was a big investment by Ryan Poles and Eberflus this offseason. So he needs to step up his game and start to apply some pressure and make some big plays to help out this Bears defense. We've talked about Roquan Smith. Roquan is the kind of player that you really hope will develop into the defensive leader and that he gets the money that he wants. I don't want to redraft that position. One of the biggest things that I'm concerned about this year are certain players on the team that I hope they prove will have sustaining success so that we don't have to redraft Larry Borum, Tevin Jenkins. Who else? I wrote down another name. Cole Kmet is another guy. We don't want to redraft the number 1 tight end. Hopefully Cole Kmet will become that number 1 tight end. Hopefully Tevin Jenkins will become that starting right guard and Borum the starting right tackle. Those are important things. And on the defense, we've got similar players too. Hopefully Kyler Gordon is not a guy that we're thinking about, we need to draft another cornerback next season or find one on free agency. So those are the things that I'm worried about right now. And the defense is to me, right now, the defense is a bigger concern to me than the offense, because that was supposed to be the one thing I thought was, okay, this defense should be okay in 2022, at least serviceable enough. And as we've said over and over in this show, it's still too early to make decisions on any one or any unit, but that performance against the Green Bay Packers was not encouraging.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point about hoping that some of those prove it guys do prove it, because I think that their draft assets need to go probably on the skill position, because if you look at the free agent class and wide receivers next year, it sucks. It's bad. There's not a superstar out there that can be signed at the end of this year. Now, they could go trade for one if they wanted to, but I don't see Ryan Poles being the kind of guy that's going to sacrifice 2 or 3 first-round picks or a second-round pick and a first-round pick or whatever to go get a high-profile wide receiver. They probably need to draft one, and then maybe they could pull off a trade for another mid-level guy. But you don't want to keep recycling your draft assets into the same positions. That's how you get into these rebuild modes whenever you have to keep putting band-aids on your mistakes. We've seen it from the last regime where it's just like, if the quarterback doesn't go out, if the quarterback doesn't pan out, we got to get, Nick Foles. If Adam Shaheen doesn't work out, we got to draft Cole Kmet. If Kevin White doesn't work out, we got to go get Allen Robinson. If Leonard Floyd doesn't work out, we got to go get Robert Quinn. And you just see this, just keep putting band-aids and band-aids and band-aids on the same position, and it never allows you to actually address your positions of need because you keep trying to put band-aids on band-aids on band-aids. So I hope that some of those prove-it guys actually do prove it so they can push their assets into other areas in which they need to. Final question before we start wrapping things up here, guys. It seems like both teams might be running the ball quite a bit. Over under on this game. Do you think you think the game's over in under 2.5 hours? Alyssa, go ahead, because it seems like both teams are just going to try to take the air out of the ball.
Yeah, and I was saying that too about the first half of the Packers game went really quickly because there was a lot of running on both sides. So I mean, I could definitely see that, and this could be a short game. I mean, I'm not anticipating a lot of passing on either side, and I mean, the weakness on both of these defenses is the run defense. The Bears have the 32nd ranked run defense. The Texans are 30th. Like, they're giving up 160 rushing yards a game. So, I mean, naturally, you have to attack that. So, I mean, we're going to see a lot of running. I mean, maybe we see Tristan Ebner, kind of get some carries too in this game too. So, and I think the over-under on points too. I think like the first one to 20 wins, and I think the over-under was set at 40.5, and I'm like,
cool.
I'm not buying that.
That's juicy.
Give me the under.
Oh man, it probably will hit the under. But Aldo, is it quick game? You think we're doing our post game show at I guess you're at noon, so you think we're doing the post game show at 2:30, 2:45?
Yeah, wouldn't that be cool? Yeah, I hope they do run the ball a lot, and I do hope that they utilize that play action, because if they're going to run the ball like they did against Green Bay, that play action is going to open up, and Justin Fields will have an opportunity from the pocket to throw some for some explosive plays. That's one of the top things I'll be watching this upcoming game, and I just love watching David Montgomery run with the ball. I mean, he's inspiring. He makes me want to get up and start exercising and stuff, and then start moving around, because he's using every muscle in his body to gain every inch. He's an inspiration, I think, to Chicago Bears fans. When I was on TV with Jared Payton, I said, he reminds me of your dad. Not that he's your dad, of course, sure. Because Walter had special energy force around him, but his will to gain yards is phenomenal. I really, really love that guy.
How he likes to run through people.
Yeah, he always falls forward.
Love
and that's
that.
Another guy in one way or another is in a prove it year, because are the Bears bringing him back, or is he auditioning for another team? We're not sure what the front office thinks about re-signing a running back, because recent history shows that doesn't always work out, because eventually they'll break down. We see Derrick Henry kind of being slow off of his injury. We saw Christian McCaffrey and the amount of injuries he's had to, withstand. We see the contract that was given to Zeke Elliott. And so it's now, I don't know if the Bears would ever give a huge contract to Montgomery, but if they could get a team-friendly deal, I'd be all about that. But once again, that's a guy that we're not sure is in the long-term plans of this front office. But man, like you said, Aldo, I love watching him run. He's my favorite running back, just because he just runs aggressively, but those jump cuts, they are incredible. The way that he is able to switch positions on a dime. It's and remember, whenever, I think it was it last year or 2 years ago, where they're like, oh man, he might be out half the season. Apparently he's bionic, because he was ready for week 1 whenever I think he had a knee injury or a leg injury or something about that. He does not miss a lot of time. He does not miss, and for the position he plays, doesn't miss a lot of time. He's dependable. Best ability, availability. And I think that he's, and depending on what their thought of is on Khalil Herbert, we'll see. I would love to have both of them there. I think that having two guys that can, almost, I don't want to say split the load, but kind of give that 60-40 load, or that 70-30 split there, to keep both legs fresh. I would love to have them in the backfield for quite some time, but we'll see. But let's start wrapping some things up here. Before we close things out, let's talk about what we're all doing. Aldo, we'll start with you because I can't keep track of the amount of shows that are on the Barroom Network. It's out of control, but I love it. Go for it.
We are tomorrow. We've got Crosstown Crosstalk. Vinny Parisi does an excellent job of covering both Chicago baseball teams and all the hot topics in Major League Baseball. And then the Mac and Reed show at 7 p.m. They spend about the first 40 minutes talking about the Chicago Bears, and then after that they cover hot topics in pop culture, whether it's sports or music or movies. And then at 9 p.m. tomorrow, we've got the Bear Debate, this show that John Buffone created for the Barroom, and we're going to have two excellent debaters. Our very own Jordan Silvera is going to go up against Lester Wolfong from Windy City Gridiron. That's going to be an outstanding debate show. I can't wait for that. That's all happening tomorrow right here on the Barroom Network.
I'm glad I'm not in those. I'm glad I'm not on that show anymore. Those guys would smoke me. I'm glad I just created it and got out of there. Like, nope, I'm good. Alyssa,
bring your popcorn ready.
yeah. Alyssa, it's 45 or 50 articles you've done since Sunday. So, what do you got?
65.
What do you got cooking?
As always, just a lot of pregame stuff, getting ready for Texans on Sunday. It's a lot. We're getting busy. I'm really curious to see too with how the experts are looking at this game. But we got a whole bunch of pregame stuff. We got keys to the game. We got we're chatting with Texans Wire. I mean, not John, but Mark, who he mentioned too. We're gonna be talking to him and getting to know the Texans a little bit better as well. And I mean, I'm all for this short game we were talking about because, like, let me get my game stuff done so I can, like, watch a little football afterwards. Like, let's get this going.
Can't go wrong. The amount of content. There's so much content. Alyssa accounts for, I think, at least 90% of it. Every Bears article you read, Alyssa probably has some kind of impact on that. But before we close things out, make sure you tune into the post-game show on the Barroom Network. Bear Football with myself, Tyler Ellis, and Danny Shimon. We have raw emotions after the game. Thank God it's not going to be at night, so it's not midnight and I'm tired and I have to go to sleep. We can actually talk about the game and actually have some analysis on that. So the second the scoreboard hits triple zeros, we go live for reaction analysis and everything that you can think of that goes on with the Bears game. We will talk about it. So make sure you come to the YouTube channel. You find us on Twitter. You find us on Facebook. Anywhere that we're at, we're going to go live. So make sure you tune into that and get your comments in, get your questions in, and make sure that you tune into that. Oh, we got a late Nasli Briones, who does the Bears the Bear Previa. I can't even say it right. I'm not a Spanish speaker, but the Previa. Yeah, make sure you keep your eyes out for the Previa that's coming out, I believe, either tomorrow or Friday. So make sure you look out for that. That's a great segment. But that will do it for this edition of Buffone 55. For Aldo Gandia and Alyssa Barbieri, I'm John Buffone. Enjoy the game, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Take care, everyone. Let me hit this thing. I forgot to
Great outro. Seamless
I love
outro.
this ending.
Don't edit it.
Oh my God.
Seamless
Put in the
outro.
bloopers.
But we're still live. Just keep
I'm
me up.
over here thinking about,
Oh, no, what the hell are you doing? We're still live.